American academic medicine is very dogmatic and narrowly focused around pharmaceutical interventions. It's not because like they are actively ignoring everything else. It's more just like that's just all they know. And there are systems deeply ingrained to reinforce that pattern. It's just tough to break into an industry that is a multi-trillion dollar industry that employs a significant portion of the American population. But the great irony is I have these conversations with my colleagues in the hospital. Like, bro, look at how much money we just spent in this operation and look at the outcome we got. There's an incongruency. Where is the education around food? Where is the early intervention with exercise and exercise physiology for children? Like if you take a tenth of the amount of money we use in American healthcare and just put it 3 decades earlier, you can put off a lot of this chronic disease burden, a lot of the surgical burden, a lot of the hospitalizations that are costing us trillions of dollars. But the question is, how do we do it?
Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Check out the show notes, pick up a copy of Break Barriers or Audacious. Today's guest is a guest I'm very excited to have on. Him and I have been in contact now for quite a while. We've gotten to know each other on a personal front, been following each other's journeys, and it just made perfect sense that I bring him on the show. Today, I have Dr. Shah Ahmed. He's a physician who began his career in the operating room as a neuroanesthesiologist at NYU. After years in academic medicine, he transitioned to community practice on Long Island. His focus has evolved from putting patients to sleep to helping them wake up to be the best version of themselves. His practice, Weight Loss and Vitality, is based in Riverhead, where he lives with his wife and 2 young sons. And as we're going to find out today, there's a lot more to him than that bio right there. Shah, thank you for joining me, man.
No, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So first things first, before we get into medicine and before we kind of dive into your journey and everything that you're doing right now and your philosophy, I know I want to first and foremost congratulate you on finishing your first marathon most recently. So congrats on that, dude.
Thank you. You're inspirational, for that as well. That was a brutal run, man. But yeah, I'm glad I got that feather in the cap.
Well, I think one of the things that the audience would really be interested in kind of learning from you, given that it was your first go around, and that you committed to training, and I saw you. I've been following you along, I've been following your training runs for the last 4 or 5 months before the race. Talk to me about what your biggest learning was from this entire experience over the last 5 months.
The biggest learning over the last 5 months, it's actually something that you said as well. It's a lot more mental than I appreciated. It is, I know some people say it's like 50 mental, 50 physical, but for everyone it's different. But for me, there's a big mental barrier. As with a lot of things in life, you think you can't do something and then you get close to it and then you do it. And then all of a sudden that's like your new normal. So I never thought I could run 10 miles, 12 miles until like the training run came and then I did the run. And then all of a sudden it's like you just established these new normals. Like I started running like a year and a half ago, and really I was inspired by, Meredith, my wife, Dave, our mutual friend Dave, and I started little by little. I did a 5K, a 10K, then the half marathon. That was a big one for me because I got the Brooklyn half marathon, and that's such a fun run because it ends in like Coney Island, and then I signed up for the Southampton marathon. But yeah, like it's just you keep pushing yourself until you reach that mental barrier, you cross it, and then all of a sudden your brain just tells you like, oh, that's okay now. And it's just great. There was more that I was capable of than I even believed myself. And I'm a pretty positive person too. But like running for sure from a personal development standpoint, like pushed my mental and physical limits beyond what I thought was possible.
And you're a dad too. So the fact that you're a dad and that you're juggling this, as a father, uh, as you were kind of going through the motions, and I saw you posting with your kids throughout the journey as well. Talk to me a little bit about what was running through your mind as you were kind of taking on this goal that you had never accomplished before, and you put it in front of you, you committed yourself to it, and as we both know, as parents, kids do as you do, not as you say, right? And so they're watching you go through the motions. Talk to me a little bit about what was running through your head while juggling the demands of running your own business, being a family man, and chasing this down.
I'll be honest with you, like around May, when I mean, we haven't gotten to this part of the story yet, but like I quit my full-time anesthesia practice at the end of April, early May. I opened this. I had a newborn, didn't have my full-time job income anymore, invested this capital into this business, signed up for the marathon, and I was doing these long training runs, exhausted because I had a newborn. And so anyone who has a newborn, the last thing you can think about is like running or training during the day. But I've had cycles like this in my life, and this is just what works for me. I know I will perform when I put up these like big goals. And I know like I set my sometimes people are like, oh man, you're setting yourself up for failure. But for me, even if I fail a little short of these lofty goals, I'm happy because like I'm much further along than where I started. You know what I mean? So yeah, some of my training runs were not great. Some of them I was sleep deprived. Some of my pace was bad. Sometimes I missed some runs here and there. Maybe on the business front, like I wasn't developing as much as I could have, maybe even I was like a little bit less present than I could have at home. Like I can't be there 100%, it's this balance of all of it that's really, really tough to achieve. And I think it's impossible. I'm a very firm advocate that parents should not be martyrs at the pedestal of their children because children are very interesting in the sense that, and any parent can relate to this, which is like children will take as much as you want to give them. Your child will want you all the time, like
Yeah,
24/7,
yeah,
so it behooves you to strike that balance to obviously make time for the family, but also watch out for your own personal development and your health as well. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to have any longevity in your parenting career, also, right? I mean, I don't want to be here for a short amount of time. I want to be here for a long time. Um, so I wouldn't say there's like one thing I learned, but it's just reiterated this, pattern in my life that I have to make time for myself. I have to push myself, and it's only through pushing myself that I can make progress. And I'm okay with failure. I'm not afraid of failure. That's something that I got over quick, over the last 5 to 10 years. Like failing, I'm looking forward to failing now. I love failing because that means I've tried something.
yeah. No, I mean, I love that. And that is obviously very in tune with the premise of Mile 40 and a topic that, is talked about all the time with regards to embracing failure and one's relationship with failure and how important that is to, seeing through what it is that you're capable of doing. So let me ask you, in the context of the marathon, what was your goal on day one? And, when you look back on what happened on race day, how did you navigate that, in your head internally?
My goal is very simple. I just want to like finish. So that's it. I mean, my first marathon. I think having any loftier goal than that is like a little bit of hubris, right? And I think I did, despite it being a hot summer, despite being sleep deprived, not getting all of my runs in, I still went in pretty confident that I would finish. I did have a little bit of a lofty goal of finishing strong, but the elements were not in my favor. The run started off at a crisp like 60-ish, but then like midway it was like 80 degrees and there's no shade. I mean, people were dropping like flies.
It
So
wasn't pretty out there.
it was not pretty out there. So like the fact that I finished, I was very happy. I mean, I was short on like some electrolytes, I'm sure. I cramped up at some point. I had to pull over and like massage my leg. Like that's not stuff that I anticipated happening. I wasn't excited that it happened. Like I never cramped up during a training run. But then again, I never ran 26 miles, so it was like a new barrier for my body. But I did it, and I finished strong enough that like when I saw my kid the finish line. I picked him up and we ran across together. And that made the day, all the pain
That makes it all worth
evaporated.
it.
Yeah, all the pain evaporated at that point. Because to this day, he says, Daddy, remember when we won the race together? Like, because he felt, involved. He was with me and he was so excited when I picked him up and we ran through the finish line. Like, I mean, those memory making moments, like, I live for that right now. Like, though making a memory like that requires a level of physicality that is higher than sitting on a couch watching a movie together. You know what I mean? And I think that raw experience of being out there and doing something, like, that's what I want him to chase after too.
Absolutely. There's nothing like a young kid asking you if you won the marathon, and then you have to
Yeah,
break it to them that you didn't win, but you won in a different
yeah,
context.
exactly.
No, I really, really appreciate you opening up about that, because I know that there are a lot of people out there who are thinking about doing what you just did. And one of the things that I want to make sure that, we relay through this conversation is the fact that, to your point, number one thing is it's a lot more mental than you ever anticipate it's going to be. Number two, have grace with yourself with regards to, all of your responsibilities. In this case, as a parent, as a business owner, you understand that there are going to be areas or days where you just can't give 100%, but you're going to do the best that you can. And then number three, managing your expectations around, what it is, what's going to be like that first time that you put yourself in a position that you haven't been in before. Because, and I've talked about this several times before, most of the times when you're training for your first marathon, you're training up to mile 20, 21 maybe. And the truth of the matter is your body, your mind, your spirit has never met mile 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. And so, it's foreign territory. And there's a lot of room for things to go wrong. And a lot of times it's not even just your body, it's your mind, having to convince itself that it can move forward. And so I appreciate you for talking us through that. And I think, that's a really good way to open up the conversation here, because um, your your journey has been incredibly unique, but it's one that I know will resonate very deeply with our audience. And that's tied to what you were talking about when you mentioned the fact that, you want to be here for a long time. And when you think about your commitment to your children and your wife and really now anyone that walks through the door as a patient, it's to kind of project on them um, why we should be modeling our mindset to be a little bit less reactive and more so proactive. And it's your philosophy of medicine and how you got here that I think is going to be the real thread of this conversation. So let's take the audience back a little bit. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Um, my parents came here from Bangladesh. I was born in 1990. It's a very funny story. I love telling this story. My mom was 8 months pregnant when she got the like refugee visa for Bangladesh. And at customs in Bangladesh, I think there was like some sort of conversation, and someone asked her if she was pregnant or not. And like my mom was like, "No, I'm not pregnant." Like just in case that wouldn't like
They didn't
let
want to
her
let her,
fly.
just in case they wouldn't let her on the plane.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
So like when you think about your life and like small moments, like if my mom handled that differently or if that guard was mean, like maybe I wouldn't be here. That's like wild to think about. But yeah, she came here. She came with like a cousin. She didn't speak English. They had to find a hospital. I was born. We grew up in Brooklyn. Uh, Classic like immigrant story. We didn't have a lot. Scraped together, did the best we could. My mom had three other boys, so I'm the oldest of four. So we're four boys. Um, but yeah, grew
What
up
did
in
they do for
Brooklyn.
work?
Currently,
No, your
my
parents, what did they do?
my mom, at home taking care of the household, and then my dad had a various jobs. I mean, he tried hard in the beginning to get work, couldn't, and then he got like I think he was like a busboy, and then he was a dishwasher, and then like at the peak of his career, he was a coat check man for the Windows on the World, which
Mhm.
was the restaurant
On the
at the
World
Twin
Trade Center.
Towers, yeah, the
Yeah.
World Trade Center. Yeah, so like that was, I have so many like amazing memories from he would take us to work sometimes and even take us up to the windows on the world, and I have memories of that. I think um, obviously after 2001 he didn't have that. We had a bit of a family downturn after 2001. That was a tough time. I mean, for New York City in general, obviously, but my dad was out of work, and the household wasn't doing so great, but they figured it out, scraped together whatever they could, took care of us, and then finally, I went off to college, which was a big move for us. I got into Cornell University, which was really nice, and I have to be honest with you, I never once thought about my childhood as like difficult. I loved my family. We had a very loving household. We had good values. Like we always ate. There was no issues. But it was when I applied for financial aid, the FAFSA application.
Yeah, I remember the FAFSA.
It dawned on me at that point, plus when I arrived at Cornell, that like we were like amongst probably some of the poorest Americans like in the country. Like I filed the FAFSA and Cornell responded. It's like, oh, we have a select few that we apply with these types of demographics, and then we don't charge them tuition. So
Oh,
here you
wow.
go. So like that was a very pleasant surprise, and I'm deeply grateful to Cornell for that very reason. Like I was able to graduate debt free, which is not something I could say for my colleagues. Um, so yeah, I feel like I went off on a tangent here.
No,
Are
no,
you still?
that's
Mhm.
perfect. I mean, I was
Yeah.
going to ask you, tell me a little bit more about the dynamics of your family, and I think that by addressing the fact that for the most part, you guys were tight knit,
Mhm.
dinners together. It doesn't seem like there was any outlandish circumstances that perhaps kind of caused issues in your younger years.
No,
Yeah.
nothing crazy. I mean, the only thing I'll speak of maybe is like, I mean, there is a cultural incongruency when you are raised in a Bengali household that is so I was raised Muslim and very conservative. And my parents basically made their best attempts to assimilate, but there's like a ceiling to that, at their age. And so very early on, it occurred to me I kind of had to lead like a dual life. There was like my life at home. In fact, the starkest representation of that is actually my name. So my name is Shah Nadir Ahmed, right? So my given name actually is Nadir. That's my middle name. So at home, I'm called Nadir. All my Bengali family members call me Nadir. But in America and in American institutions, you're called by your first name. So I was always called Shah. So literally, I went from one life where I was called Shah, exit that life, enter another life, and be called Nadir. So like in my brain, it was just very easy to split the two. The challenges came when the two had to come together, and the biggest example of that was when I introduced Meredith, my current wife, to my parents. So that's a whole saga in and of itself, but we've
We're
navigated
definitely
that.
gonna have
And
to get. We're definitely gonna have to get there. Look, the
yeah,
duality of being a first generation immigrant. I get it. I was born in
yeah,
Egypt, so I get it.
hmm
I understand. And we've had several immigrants on this show, and there's definitely uh, a back and forth motion that probably goes through your entire lifetime, so long as your parents are still here, where you're still kind of ingraining in them the this is actually how things are done here. And it's different for everybody over time. And some parents adapt quicker than others. And ultimately, I think that it allows for just constant co-learning because you're just both learning how to work with each other over the course of your lifetime, hopefully. And at times, and I think this happens more when you're older, where you start to kind of, I think, give them a little bit more credit than you did when you were younger, because you try to put yourself self in their shoes
hmm
and think about what
definitely.
you had done. And so, shout out to all the parents who immigrated and had to kind of navigate those circumstances. Um, so you graduate from Cornell. Well, one other thing actually with regards to the immigrant background, I'm assuming education was at the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, that was from the very beginning. They made it very clear, like, your only out here is to get educated and get a professional career degree, something. Like they didn't know exactly what it would take, but they were like, "We have nothing. Your only hope is to get through school, be as smart as you can, perform well." And they supported that 100%. You know, they made it very clear that education was the number one priority. They kept us out of trouble. Honestly, that I have to give them a lot of credit for that. They kept us, the four boys, out of really the amount of trouble my contemporaries in my neighborhood got into was bad. You know, it was not a great
What
neighborhood.
part of
I
Brooklyn
mean,
are you in?
it's called East New York. I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
if
I
you're
know where Eastern
familiar.
Europe
It's
is. Yeah.
right by like the JFK area. And I mean, in the early 90s, it wasn't like, I mean, gentrification is not getting going to East New York. It's like not quite there yet, even now, you know? It was a tough neighborhood. I mean, I had cousins, I had a cousin that passed away early on because of some trouble that he got into. You know, not a lot of kids were going to college and just getting into like street trouble, you know? And my parents really kept us out of that. And in the beginning, I resented them for not letting me hang out with the different people who I perceived as being cool, but they had that wisdom to understand, with their experience, that this was not the right place for the children to be hanging out and spending their time. It was much safer just to be home and keep them safe. They didn't have the ability to do like what other parents did, which is like, I don't know, go out on vacation and go out to restaurants and have experiences and whatnot. But like they did what they could to keep us safe and uh, make sure we focus on school and things like that.
What about socially? Were you spending most of your time like with
Mhm.
family and people in your cultural
Yeah,
community, or
yeah,
were
and
you?
that's the beauty of the way we grew up. Like everyone, dude, my mom has like I think I want to say 8 or 9 brothers and sisters, and this is the beauty of immigrants, right? They like flock and they're like in the same block. So like my whole extended family was in a 4 block radius, like the whole thing. And it's so cool because, and you've seen this happen in New York City, like when we came in the early 90s, the area we were in was mostly like Italian and some like Latino families. And then we just kind of like went in, we bought all the corner businesses, like we slowly develop our footprint, and they're all there. So that's where I grew up, in like a little 4 block radius. That was my
Yeah,
world.
yeah. No, I imagine. But I look. I'm always curious about those kind of situations because it's like it provides a lot of shelter, a lot of safety, and a lot of community. But sometimes I wonder how some people manage to explore beyond, that block and, realize there's more to life than, just this enclave that we've built. And there are others who never leave. And so
There are plenty in my community who haven't left. There are people there that I grew up with, and they're still there, and that's their
yeah,
world. And that's fine. I mean, to each their own. But for me, getting out to college was a big step. I mean, when I
yeah,
went to Cornell, like my worldview was completely turned upside down. Like
I
I
imagine.
I knew we weren't like rich or anything. I
Yeah,
obviously I knew that, but like I didn't realize like how great the bandwidth of human experience was. You
yeah,
know, it just blew my mind the way some of these other kids grew up, what they were exposed to, what they had access to, the parts of the world they've seen. And I mean, this is the situation that I'm navigating with my own children right now, which is like I want to give them the benefit of that lifestyle and exposure, but then there's a certain humility I grew up with. There's like a certain scrappiness and grit that I have that is definitely missing from some of my colleagues and contemporaries. So navigating that balance has been a challenge. And honestly, moving out here to Riverhead has been like one of the big moves for me, because I could see it. I could see my core values and the way I want to support and raise my children being more supportive in this environment as opposed to New York City, which is where I used to live.
How about adaptation to diversity of thought? Just coming from your background now, a big school like Cornell, like you said, right? Like there's a lot of different ideas, a lot of different uh, just general moral compasses, coming to play. Was that something that you kind of had to open your eyes up to? Again, coming from a community that
Dude,
was a little bit more tight knit.
that's its own saga in and of itself.
Let's
Because
open it.
I was raised in a conservative Muslim family, right? Very strict rules. Went to Cornell. All of a sudden, I'm exposed to like everything. And I had a very quick crisis of faith. And what I learned, I met Jewish people, Christian people, people who claim to be atheists, Buddhists. I was just like, oh my God, what? Okay. And then I was like, my religion is a lie. Is religion even a thing? And I went through this whole like exploration phase. I actually did a bunch of coursework. That's the beauty of going to Cornell. You can take a class in anything. So I did a whole course on Eastern religion. I did a whole course on Zen Buddhism. I did an introduction to the culture of Japan. Like just learning about different parts of the world and like uh, areas of faith and culture that I was never exposed to. Um, I took a bunch of like philosophy stuff. I took advanced math classwork. I mean, just anything that like expanded my brain and my horizons. And it just occurred to me that like, the human experience is very unique. And while I don't necessarily adhere to a uh, specific religion at this point. I think humans innately have a deep sense of spirituality, and that need comes through with these organized religions. And a lot of these organized religions have very common threads. Most successful religions, if you view them as, if you go through like the evolutionary biology lens of religions, the religions we have today have been the most successful, right? And they all have the same thing. You know, be morally righteous, raise families, don't hurt other people, give more than you receive. And I mean, that's just how I decided to live my life. And once I developed that moral compass, I was very lost in the beginning. Don't get me wrong. There was like I'm skipping a whole phase where I went down the tubes and became very nihilistic. And I was at a depth at some point. And the woman who rescued me was Meredith. When she found me there, she told me I was meant for much more. I was much smarter than this, much better than this. She saw in me something that I didn't see in myself when I was lost. And I think there's a lot of men who have a similar story, and there's a woman that rescues them, and I'll be forever grateful to her for finding me and helping me to believe in myself. But then what became out?
Shout out to Meredith.
Yeah,
So
shout out to Meredith for sure.
what was her background?
So she is from Long Island. She grew up in East Northport. I mean, just pretty classic, like Suffolk County girl story. Grew up working parents, went through high school, and then got to Cornell. Like she, I would say, like upper middle class for sure. Like went on your family vacations, went to Disneyland, things like that. But I would have never thought in a million years I would have interfaced with a girl like her, let alone fall in love with her and marry with her and have children with her, have beautiful children with her. My kids are so cute. Um, it's just
Well,
crazy.
what do you think she liked about you at that point?
She knew family was really important to me. She knew despite my incongruencies with my parents that I would love them for like my parents and I, my brothers and I. I'm not gonna conflate it with being in a war zone, but it was kind of similar to that. Like there is a bond that my family has that is outside of what I think your average American family has because of the fear that we had around our circumstances and getting through certain days and rough patches. And I knew that despite my differences with my parents, like my Meredith knew like I would always be with them, take care of them, love them. And I think that really appealed to her because I had a very strong moral compass when it came to family. She also really, I think, appreciated the fact that like I don't really play games. I'm not a big bullshitter. I don't lie. I'm very off the cuff, honest. So I think that appealed to her a lot as well. Um, yeah, I don't know. It'd be funny to ask her this question, like, what did college merit see in me? I'm honestly not sure. I didn't feel like I was all that impressive in college, but clearly she saw something that I didn't.
Well, I get we're going to build on this, but I think it's really important to get the foundation, set, and we have a good idea of where you came from, but you talk about your own your own internal exploration around religion and questioning where you came from, and look, I think this is very natural. I don't even want to say it's a guy thing because I think it's a guy or a girl. Like you get to a point in life where you want to know what the deeper meaning is. You want to know why you're here, what your purpose is. You want to know if you've been taught lies your entire life. You want to know if you know everything you've been taught was simply because you were just born into the family that you're born in, and they just basically said, this is what we've been doing, so this is what you're going to be doing. Or you want to know what the real truth is, and you want to go find it yourself, and you want to go on a journey and explore what that journey is. And I think that era in one's life is, quite frankly, never ending. Like, you're never going to have all the answers. I think there are certain parts of that journey where you find enough answers to at least be at peace with regards to the trajectory of your life, and kind of feel, at comfort with it. But I think until you build up that security and feel that internal security, it's really hard to bring someone else in. And so I guess the question I have for you is, um, as she started to come into your life and kind of accept you for who you are, and what it is that you're navigating, was there any resistance on your side? Did you feel secure enough to potentially go down a path that, as you kind of alluded to earlier, might be a path that, once you were to bring her home, you'd probably have to kind of answer some questions?
Hmm. Um, it was a very difficult thing for me to navigate. And I would be remiss not to mention that I definitely felt like I had a front with her in the beginning. The good thing about it was that she broke that down for me very quickly. We actually initially started as friends. So we met in sophomore year. We didn't start dating until senior year. And so we had this 2 year period where we honestly just became friends. And that I think really set us up for success because in a very like non-pressurized way, we got to know each other really organically. She knew I basically told her everything about my whole life. And she did the same for her life. And we got to know each other really well and just it's just like an organic process as you know someone. It takes time for you to bring your walls down. I had a lot of walls, just given the way I was raised, and I was so worried about how people perceived me. And she was the first person that I was getting the sense that when I told her about the real me, she was like, "Oh, okay, finally, you're telling me like the real stuff." And she's like, "It's okay. Like, none of us are perfect. Like, this is you. This is your story. That's okay." And I never felt that validation from anyone because I'd never really gotten that deep with anyone. Even like my quote close friends, like they only knew about me and my life very superficially. She was the first person that outside of my family that I told about like my entire upbringing and everything like that. So it took time for that to dissolve. And then, when we started dating, things moved really quickly because, I met her family, she met my family. Because after college, you kind of have to make a decision, right? Because like we were going to be long distance at that point. I went to Rochester for medical school. She was working in Long Island. And it was like either we continue this relationship or not. So that was kind of an important fork in the road. And we both agreed that like, you know, there's something important here that's worth saving and cultivating. And so we worked through long distance for 4 years. And then when I went to apply and match, I exclusively applied to like the New York City area. And I had the good fortune of matching at my uh, first pick. And we moved into New York City together and started that phase of our life. So it was good.
That's
We got
awesome.
married. We got married at the end of med school. I skipped that part. I don't even
So
think
how,
about the marriage because like our relationship. It's not like the marriage changed anything. It's just like a piece of paperwork. We had like already been together for so long at
how
that
old were
point.
you at that point? What, like 26, 20, 25,
I got
26?
married at 25,
Yeah. So you got
which is
married
like
at 20.
young in today's days.
Very young in
But
today's
yeah,
years. How old are you now?
I'm 35.
So you've been married for 10 years.
Yeah, in April it'll be 10 years.
Wow. So
Mhm.
you could throw a lot of wisdom at me and really all of us here. That's
When it comes to relationships, I've given a lot of advice, and it's a lot of
yeah.
stuff that you've already heard. But like, yeah, I probably could.
Yeah. All right. So you kind of talked about going to med school in Rochester and then matching for your residency. So
Mhm.
residency was at NYU, I presume?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So um and it sounds like you knew you were going down this path when you were in college, the med school route.
Um, Once the decision was made in the middle of my college career, yes, it was always like in the back of my mind, but going to med school was always like a daunting task. I kind of like second guessed in the middle, and I was just like, God, I should probably just like get a job of some sort, and med school might not be a possibility for me. But Meredith was also again pivotal in encouraging me to continuing to pursue that. But yeah,
Did you have like was there anything in particular that you were passionate about? And like those are tough years where like you don't really know what you want, but like was your gut, pushing you in any sort of direction, whether it was around pursuing an ambition, a dream? Like, was there anything in the back of your mind, if someone were to ask you when you were like, you know, 20, 21, 22, about what you wanted to do? Any
like
idea what you wanted to do?
2021 would be that kind of
Yeah.
after graduation.
Yep.
Honestly, no. I was still kind of in survival mode at that point. Like to me, I had severe imposter syndrome. I thought it was all fake until like I arrived. Like med school, I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna be found out. Like I don't really deserve to be in med school. Same thing, like another echelon. Like when I went to Cornell, my mind was blown, and then I went to med school, and then my mind was blown again because you're meeting this whole different cohort of people. Like these people, like oh, their parents are doctors or executives or just like a whole different like people with different connections. And like here I am, just like a nobody from Brooklyn, sneaking my way in. And again, like this narrative plagued me for a long time. It was really over the last like 5 to 6 years where I finally decided to abandon that narrative because you have a choice. Like you can either tell yourself that you don't deserve to be there or that you deserve to be there just as much as everyone else.
What
um,
what was your edge? Like, did you feel like you had an edge? And could that edge been in the fact that, perhaps you were an underdog of sorts?
What's my edge? Honestly, I don't know, man. I never chalked myself up as being particularly smart or anything like that. Yes, above like average, but nothing crazy. Honestly, I just like get along with people. I have a very good ability, and that's what helps me in anesthesiology as well. Like I can get along, like I can meet someone and I can get along with them. I can make them laugh within the first 60 seconds. That's what I try to do. That's almost like a game that I play with myself. Like when it comes to sitting in a group or talking or speaking in public, that's actually something that I was very good at in medical school. There was two parts. There was sitting in lecture and listening to lectures, and then there was this different small group class where we had to talk amongst each other, develop solutions to problems, and also present on our solutions, things like that. I love that. That was my favorite of all the things. Like working together, collaborating as a team, speaking, you'd assign someone a task like, oh, go learn about this, present it tomorrow. Like I love presenting, getting in front of a crowd and talking. I never had like stage fright or anything like that. So that doesn't bother me at all. I love teaching. I love talking. I love meeting new people. That might be like the only edge that I have.
If you know me, you know that I like to look good and feel good. As an endurance athlete who trains daily, I need my wardrobe to fit the mold. Roan creates performance-driven clothing for your active lifestyle. Each piece is designed for versatility and made with integrity to outfit you for an active life lived on your own terms. The Roan promise is to help you move forever forward. Use code MILE40 for 20% off online and in store for new customers only. Visit www.rhone.com, that's Rhone spelled RHONE, or find your local store and move forever forward starting today. As you were going through med school and probably in the early stages of residency, it's interesting to me now that I know a little bit more about you, right? And I already kind of had an idea about, who you were and some of your background. But given the fact that you came from, a conservative upbringing and then you went through the traditional med school route, the presumption was that this is the way that things are and this is the way that things are going to be. And what I love about where this story goes is that you're a disruptor. And I want to figure out where the disruptor in you rose up internally. And I know we're going to get to your own personal awakening and when that happened. But as you were going through the motion in med school, and even when you started things off at NYU, were you just kind of were you just going through the motions, or were there periods of that where you were questioning, like, is this really the industry that I want to see myself in?
So I'll say definitely in med school there was a realization. So you go through the first 2 years of med school. doing didactics. You learn about basic science. You do cadaver lab. You learn the book stuff. Okay, so that's done, and that's pretty non-judgmental, straightforward. Not a lot of politics in that. Then you have clinicals, third year, fourth year, and that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's when you see all the stuff you learn in the first 2 years be practiced in years three and four. And that for me was where reality really slapped me across the face. And I learned that, I had this idea of being a doctor that patients relied upon, could communicate with, and, be of service. And it turned out that medicine definitely, at least in the hospital setting, which is where most of your training occurs in medical school, is very much so like it's definitely a business. You learn that first and foremost. You also learn that there's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of bureaucratic systems. So it was just like this reality check of like, oh, this lofty like calling of being a healer, a physician, and then like the stark reality of this being a business. The healthcare system is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Physicians as employees function a certain way. Physicians as owners used to function a different way when they had stake in what was happening. Um, the education around healthcare is behind. Everything that we learn about in medical school is about conservatively 10 to 15 years behind the primary literature, which is bananas that you have to wait that long for evidence to reach practice. But that's how it works. So yeah, there was a little bit of disillusionment that happened, and I went in originally wanting to be some sort of primary care doctor or someone who has a relationship with their patients. And I just very quickly was like, this is like not what I had envisioned. And so I lean more towards the technical specialty. So I looked at radiology, surgery, anesthesiology, where like there's actually a specific problem or
Yeah.
task.
And your
And
job is just to fix
yeah,
that.
and it was just much more of a pure pursuit. And there was like a little bit less bullshit involved. And anesthesiology, I really gravitated towards because it had a lot of stuff that I liked. I liked working with my hands. I liked placing lines, intubating, doing procedures, using the echocardiogram, ultrasound. I loved working with pharmacology and having a direct response. Like when I have to like lower someone's blood pressure in the operating room, there's not a conversation. I don't have to wait 6 months for it. Like I just do it and I take care of it. And the mission is very clear. Like keep this patient alive during this surgery. Do an amazing job at that, and then you'll be good. And so, like, I liked having the small wins every day. I like seeing a lot of different surgeries. I actually really love surgery. The great irony is, if you really love like the beauty of surgery, one of the best things to be is an anesthesiologist because, like, I have had the good fortune of watching thousands of different surgeries from some of the best surgeons in the world. And then my final practice was neuroanesthesiology, as we said. And like, when I worked at NYU, uh, in the neuroanesthesia department. I mean, those were some of the best surgeons in the world. It was like watching Picasso paint. Like that's how I tell people. Like it's watching like magic happen. Like some of these surgeons were so good at what they did, and I was able to watch. I mean, I would watch these surgeries 10 hours, 12 hours. Like watch them do these impossible tasks, and it was just absolutely fascinating. So there was a lot of beauty and fun in that for sure.
I had my neurosurgery in my youth. I don't know if I told you that.
Oh no, you
Uh,
didn't. Who was your
yeah.
surgeon? You don't have to tell me.
Jafar.
Jafar, yeah. He actually
Yeah.
retired a couple years ago. He's in
Yeah.
the
And
south of France enjoying his life.
that was back in 2000. So 25 years ago, which is wild.
Oh, wild.
Yeah, 25. It was my 13th birthday. Um, but I remember when, they were determining where I was going to do it. It was a no-brainer at the time that's where we were going to do it.
Yeah. That's a good
Uh,
pun. I don't think you even intended that.
yeah, there you go. Um, oh yeah, no-brainer. um, Man, no, I lost my train of thought for a second, but
Well, you're asking like how things change. And like for me, it
yeah, no,
changed in med school. Yeah, for sure.
I came back to it. So you alluded to the fact that like, there was a period where you realized like the business side of it. And I think this applies to a lot of different careers, but in particular in medicine, because to your point, there's just such a human element to it, especially a lot of people go into it. And I imagine a lot of people are going through the interview process and talking about why they want to do medicine. And a lot of the reasons why they want to do medicine has nothing to do with the business side of it and has more to do with the human side of it. And I think, like in any other career, someone like you, someone like me, especially when we're starting off, once we kind of get the idea that there are a lot of people in it for the wrong reasons, or a lot of people who are just playing the rules of the game in order to get ahead, and you can't even really blame them for that because it's the way that the thing was set up to begin with, you really start a search where you're just looking for people who have made it to where you want to go, but who have done it the right way, right? Like I remember when I was in banking, I was constantly looking for like the good guy up there, the guy who wasn't, just, playing the game and kind of going through the motions and lying through their teeth or just saying the things that everybody wanted to hear, and kind of, going through the charade. And I guess my question to you is, when you were kind of in particular at NYU, and you were kind of looking up at everybody who's incredibly successful, who's kind of built their career there, did you find a lot of people who you could perhaps, lean into? Or did you find that it was just a sea of individuals who just kind of played the game, made their money?
No, I
Um,
mean, it was so, I mean, there were 200 anesthesiologists in our department. So, I mean,
yeah,
obviously there's going to be some,
there's going to be some good people in there.
some good people in there and
Yeah.
some not so good people in there. And I had, that's what, if another superpower, speaking of edge, I am very good at seeking out mentors. That's like one thing I always do. I'm always seeking out mentorship, mentors, and extracting information from people who are about like 5 to 10 years ahead of me. Because that's where I think you can get an edge in life. You can avoid common pitfalls and mistakes. So I talk to everybody. I'm always talking to everybody and getting advice about career trajectory and things like that. And a couple of mentors were very clear that I had this false, like, I had this illusion in my head that like I had to be in academic medicine, I had to publish papers, I had to be at the cutting edge and head to the top of my department. And a couple good mentors sat me down. They're just like, that's just one path. You don't necessarily need to do that if that's not your calling, if that's not what's feeling right. Like the practice of anesthesia is a subspecialty of medicine as a whole. And even in the practice of anesthesia, there's different styles of practicing anesthesia. And we're practicing one particular style of academic anesthesia here in Midtown Manhattan. Like there's a whole different world out there. And that really opened up my eyes to, because I thought I was just going to do my whole career there. I mean,
Yeah.
to leave NYU was perceived to be like a mistake. Like, why would, where
Yeah.
else? The perception was like, where else would you go? This is the best. This is the best
Yeah.
hospital
You're
in
at the,
Midtown, in Manhattan, the pinnacle of academic medicine. You're a neuroanesthesiologist. Like, where are you going to go? Like, where can you go that's better? And then it dawned on me that better is for me to judge, not for someone else to judge. And if I just sit here and I'm not happy with their better, like I have to find my better. And it became very clear post COVID. I mean, a lot of stuff happened, right? COVID really broke down a lot of walls. Like we start to see the man behind the curtain when COVID came in a lot of different aspects of our government, healthcare, everything. Like think shit is not as organized as we thought. Okay, turns out. Um, then I had my son. We're stuck in this midtown apartment, and like my wife and I are just having frank conversations like, where do you want to live? Where are we raising this kid? What kind of life do you want to lead? And that's one thing that's great about our relationship. Like we love checking in with each other, talking, making plans together. And I think that led to us making the decision to move to Long Island. We'd
for
actually
context,
purchased.
what was your wife doing for work?
So my wife is currently the vice president of the Feinstein Institute, which is the research arm of Northwell Health. So she's a kind of a high-end like admin, more on the operations side. And she had worked her way up organically. She had always worked for Northwell Health, and she was doing something similar at this time. And her job was like hybrid after COVID. She went in every day pre-COVID and hybrid after COVID. We bought during post-COVID, we bought this house out in Riverhead, which is where I'm at now, just as kind of like we almost bought it sight unseen, just as an escape. Because after COVID, we were just like, gosh, we need some grass, we need some trees. And it led to us just falling in love with this lifestyle out here. And that's around then, around when my son was 3 or 4 months, we made the decision. Like we quit. I quit New York City, moved out here, and nothing's, I don't miss the city at all. Things have been very different.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes that I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. But parts of it, because no one saw what you saw. No one, no one, not saying no one, but most people were not in the thick of it like you probably were. And to your point earlier, and I meant to ask you this, as you were kind of going through as you were rising through your career, and now you're at NYU, and like you said, right, like you're at the pinnacle. What do your parents think of this? Not that it really matters at this point. You're married, you have your own family, but like, I'm sure they were beaming with pride as they found out you were going through this
Yeah,
trajectory. Um, but yeah, talk to me a little bit about the dynamic there.
definitely. It's honestly they were pretty supportive, I have to say. They definitely perceived it as a downgrade, like brand wise, for whatever that matters. But like, I don't care about that stuff, Like, yeah, I went from a tertiary care academic center to a small community hospital, but at the end of the day, I'm helping people. I'm happy to help people. They were very happy to have me there, so like, there's something to be said to like going somewhere where like they're all excited that you're joining. But no, they were pretty supportive because to them, family is very important too, and they understood that like I really wanted to raise my son in the environment that I wanted to raise him in, and I didn't want to raise him in Manhattan, and they were very supportive of that.
What are your brothers doing?
So I have three little brothers, Galib, Nabil, and Adnan. Galib has been in like the tech industry. He's currently at Datadog, which is
Yeah,
in Midtown
very familiar.
Manhattan. He's a product manager there, I want to say. He's been in California, moved back to New York City. He's married. He lives in, I want to say, Long Island City. And then Nabil is a some sort of engineer tech guy for a some sort of like IT security firm. He's gonna be mad I don't remember all this, but he's kind of living as a bachelor in Astoria, enjoying his life. And then Adnan has been with my parents for a long time. He had a long course of finding himself in and out of college. Finally finished up with decided on nursing school. He's actually in the process of finishing his last semester at nursing school right now, and we're all very proud of him, very excited. And he's living with my parents in Ozone Park, New York, right now.
Awesome. I know that a big part of your overall, I'm going to call it awakening, was also tied to your own personal health. So talk to me a little bit about where that came to play, and how that kind of impacted a lot of the wheels that went into motion.
If I had to pinpoint a time, it was really around when Meredith got pregnant and we were expecting the kid. And around this time, two uncles of mine died. And they had chronic diseases and they died relatively young. And one of them left behind pretty young children. And this whole milieu of like, I'm about to have a kid, look at these uncles that just died. It's like, where am I with my health? And for the first time, I had some health introspection because before this, I was just kind of focused on the career. Like, I don't think I cared
Which
about my
is
health
kind
at
of weird
all.
though, right? As the fact that you've gone through med school and that health is at the forefront of
That's
everything you do on a daily
that
basis.
is that is the norm. It is a norm with physicians, nurses, healthcare oriented, like healthcare practitioners. The last person's health that they worry about is their own. It's common, very common. But that was the first time, and that led to this introspection and seeking out answers into my own health and like taking stock of what kind of position I was in, what kind of health trajectory I would have, learning about my family history, things like that. And I didn't get a lot of answers from the current healthcare system. Like I went to a primary care doctor. He was like, "Hey, you're healthy. Like, what can I do? I can't do anything for you. What do you want?" And it just left me very unsatisfied. And so I just went into the weeds and went down the longevity medicine literature, athletic literature, alternative medicine literature. And I just realized that I need to kind of take things into my own hands and do my own diagnostics and things and figure out where I'm at. And I determined that I had what's called sarcopenic obesity. I was skinny fat. That's the fancy way of saying that. I was already developing signs of prediabetes. I didn't have as much lean muscle mass as I should have at 6 feet tall. I did a body composition analysis. I was 6 feet tall, 170 pounds, and I was carrying around 30 to 35% body fat in my, and a lot of it in my belly. My arms and legs were pretty skinny, and I had a little bit of visceral adiposity too. And this is all very damning because on the outside, like I looked like I could have just passed for just fine. I wasn't like fit or anything. I was never
You were just
athletic,
normal.
just normal, exactly. And it occurred to me that this normal was going to set me up for being on the operating room table in 20 years' time with some diabetes complication or a heart attack or like all the stuff that we see. I'm like, it just occurred to me like I need to figure this out right now. And that's what led to this deep dive and this intervention. So I, focused on nutrition. I started working out. Like prior to this, I was never athletic. It was never in on my radar at all to strength train, to run, none of that. And it's just all new to me. And I just had to take it one step at a time. And over the course of about 7 to 8 months, I lost 27, almost 30 pounds, and it was pure fat. I retained all my lean muscle mass. My physique was very nice. I was like 10% body fat at the end of that period. I've since risen up to like 12, 13%, 14%, which is where I'm really happy at now. My athletic capability is much higher than it used to be. My strength is way higher. My energy level is better. I mean, everything in my, after I
And you just
took
finished the
stock,
marathon.
yeah, exactly. I mean, after I started taking care of myself, like I was my own athletic coach, like my own patient, like everything. It's just funny. Like, obviously, when you start taking care of yourself, you feel better. But like a lot of people don't do that. A lot of doctors don't do that. A lot of young professionals don't do that. They sacrifice themselves at the pedestal of their careers.
You know, yeah, you're not the first and you're not going to be the last. Uh, and this kind of goes back to the very beginning of the episode when you think about your parents first moving here. Fortunately and unfortunately, because immigrant parents do a lot of things right, I think this is an area where we've consistently seen it's not necessarily their first priority to perhaps, throw you into soccer when you first get
Right.
here. And then when you're older to talk to you about the importance of lifting weights and it just, isn't really ingrained in you. And then, you grow
It's
to be
it's
an
not it's
adult,
not on their radar, and it's not their
not
fault
on their
either.
radar.
Yeah.
And similarly for me, I mean, my parents did put me in sports, but I had to ask consistently to kind of like, and then I had to kind of chase it myself. But it wasn't like, hey, like let's sit down, let's talk about like why this is important. And um, I bring this up because now you're coming to this realization and you're starting to take the steps to, redirect and put yourself in the right spot. And you just moved your family because you kind of came to this awakening around, your career and understanding, you know, what you've been taught, while academically is impactful, but from an application perspective, there's a lot of things that could be better. I guess the question I'm trying to get at here is there a certain level of resentment is not the right word, but like perhaps disillusion of the fact that why wasn't I taught all this stuff earlier? And why wasn't I taught all this stuff earlier by my parents? And why did everybody who was instructing me for the last 5, 10 years as I was navigating academics telling me that this is the place I need to go? So in both areas of your life that you had to completely shift, that is getting your nutrition right, your health right, and now changing your career, everyone who led you to where you were was leading you essentially in the wrong direction. And then all of a sudden you realized, whoa, it doesn't have to be like this. And you took the pieces and put them back together on your own. And, that process, while it's extremely enlightening and like once it clicks, like you feel really good about yourself. But at the same time, there could be a moment where you're like, I wish I knew this like 10 years ago. Like, I wish I didn't have to go through all this.
There's a lot of like, I wish I knew, and I've abandoned that voice, and I'll tell you why. I'll speak to my parents first. Like, I can go through and complain about all the things my parents did wrong, right? That is not fruitful. Also, my parents did their best. And just like I'm doing my best with my child, he's gonna grow up and be like, oh, I wish dad did this, this, and that. Like, we're trying our best. And like honestly, I'm alive. They got me through the system. I'm successful now. I owe the world to them. Harking back to that story, like my parents had the wherewithal to leave Bangladesh at a time of severe poverty when they knew that their ceiling was, they hit the ceiling on their life, and they're like, the only way to make a paradigm shift is to leave this country. Like, I question if I would have, I like to think I would if I had to do it for my children, but like it's a big ask
Oh
to
yeah. I think
uproot
about it
your
all the time, right?
life. I
I
mean,
tell Christine all the time, if we were to move across the world for our kids, I don't know that we'd be able to do it as well as our parents
yeah,
did.
it's hard. So like they get a pass. Like, yeah, do I wish they put me in soccer? Do I wish like they knew to feed me a certain way and train a certain, I mean, these are all pipe dreams. Like it's, they just couldn't. It's not their fault. Like just let that go. When it comes to academic medicine, um, I'm not going to place conspiracy where naivete and incompetency will suffice. And that's the case in American academic medicine. American academic medicine is very dogmatic and narrowly focused around pharmaceutical interventions. And that's just, it's not because like they are actively ignoring everything else. It's more just like that's just all they know. And there are systems deeply ingrained to reinforce that pattern, mainly through reimbursement and things like that in the government. And so it's just tough to break into an industry that is a multi-trillion dollar industry that employs a significant portion of the American population. But you do have to sit back and like it just, I mean, the great irony is I have these conversations with my colleagues in the hospital. Like, bro, we're spending all of this money. Look at how much money we just spent in this operation. And look at the outcome we got. There's an incongruency, right? Like, where is the education around food? You know, where is the early intervention with exercise and exercise physiology for children? Like, there, if you take a tenth of the amount of money we use in American healthcare and just put it like 3 decades earlier into childhood nutrition, exercise, mental health, resilience, like all the stuff that will just help you stay well, you can put off a lot of this chronic disease burden, a lot of the surgical burden, a lot of the hospitalizations that are costing us trillions of dollars. We all know this as like a theoretical concept. But the question is, how do we do it? There's not going to be support. Like we would literally have to create this culture out of a vacuum. So that's what I've thought about this for a long time. And I think many doctors have thought about this for a long time and have pursued different avenues. Some people write books, some people speak, and I'm going to try to do the same. I'm going to try to do more. I mean, I'm going to stick my neck out and speak my truth whenever I want now. Like I used to be afraid of that. I'm no longer afraid of that. I have a social media platform, which I was originally reluctant to pursue, but I see that that's where kids are listening. And there are a lot of dumb voices on the internet. And I could sit here and complain about the idiocy that's taking place on the internet, or I can add my voice of reason. And so I chose to do the latter. Um, Same thing with opening this practice. Like I could just continue to be an anesthesiologist and collect my money and just continue to take care of people who at the terminal end of their diagnoses, usually, right? It's like someone's getting their leg chopped off because of diabetes. You know, someone's getting a heart bypass because of their cardiovascular. Like it's a done deal at that point. Like I can't help them. I can help them in that surgery, but like where was I 20 years ago to help this guy to quit smoking, quit drinking, eat better, lose some weight, control his diabetes with his lifestyle, lower his blood pressure naturally with food, exercise. Like I'm not in that space and I wanted to be in that space. So that's why I did this.
How how optimistic are you around the fact that now you're not the only one who's speaking up? I mean, I could think of a couple of guests who've been on this show even, who also were former doctors or are doctors who just, you know, transitioned out of traditional healthcare to pursue a similar mission. So what I love about it is people are picking up on it, and I think as a consumer, it's highly attractive. I do acknowledge the fact that there's a little bit of privilege, you know, that kind of goes into play here because not not everyone can necessarily afford to veer off the traditional healthcare system. But you know, from your lens, how optimistic are you? I know there's a long way to go still, but do you feel like there are the right voices are getting involved.
I definitely think so. I don't know if it's just my echo chamber of what the algorithm decides to show me, but I'm definitely noticing a trend when it comes to healthcare in the sense that people are starting to ask questions about the railroad of healthcare, which is like you just you have high blood pressure. Okay, you start a blood pressure medication. Oh, you had your first heart attack. Okay, start a statin and do this, this, and that. Get a stent. You have diabetes. Start these diabetes medications, and instead saying like, well, how can I prevent all this from happening? And there are steps that you can take to help prevent all this from happening. And I think the culture around wellness is getting a little bit better. The tough part is that the wellness space is very heterogeneous, right? Which is why I wanted to enter, because you don't traditionally see like academic physicians enter the wellness space, because the wellness space has a lot of people in it. It's got like chiropractors, Reiki healers, everyone in between. And so my hope is to bring a very clear clinical picture to what health wellness might look like. And I've been defining that for myself. And I think people are defining it in this space really well. I think Dr. Peter Attia is one of my like role models in this space. Even like Andrew Huberman,
Yeah.
who explores a lot. He's not a physician, but he's like very much so uh, given
Brain
a
health.
platform, yeah,
Yeah.
given a platform to other people to talk more about health in a more academic and scientific way, and like in a preventative way. And so I think that the interest is getting bigger. So I'm optimistic in the sense that I think the culture is shifting with our youth, hopefully. Um, I'm not optimistic in the sense that when it comes to like the ultimate bureaucracy of healthcare, we cannot escape that it is currently a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and that between the FDA, the USDA, the pharmaceutical lobbies, like there's a very clear circle of incentives to do things a certain way. I'm going to give you a very specific example, and I think your listeners will resonate with this example. This is an example from my personal life. My son developed food allergies. Discovered it very early on, a couple months of life. Okay. Went to get allergy tested. It turns out he's allergic to sesame and peanuts. The initial recommendation from the pediatrician was like, just avoid them. Go see an allergist if you want. Okay. I went to go see an allergist. The initial allergist was like, all right, confirmed testing. Yeah, he might outgrow them, he might not. And then like there wasn't like a real plan, there was no follow-up. And then like as one does, like you start learning. And like just like in longevity medicine, like I need to find what the best answer is, especially when I feel like there's something better out there. And in my research, I discovered oral immunotherapy, or OIT. And it's the practice of taking microscopic doses of the allergen and exposing it to the child, and then updosing it slowly over the course of a year until their immune system actively learns to tolerate the allergen. So OIT is not like an FDA approved modality because it's not a
Yeah. They're not
medication.
gonna, no
It's
doctor's gonna
just
tell you to do that.
Yeah, it's just peanuts. Like the doctor I ultimately went to was a cash only like allergist. He's like, I'm doing this for kids because I believe in this, but like I can't bill insurance for it. There's no code for it. I'm not prescribing any drugs. And I was just like, I don't care. This is going to be the best chance for me to give my son the life that I want to give him, because I don't want him to live in fear of hummus and peanut butter, or like peanuts on a plane. Like there are these kids who live terrified of their allergies, or they accidentally get exposed and their throat closes up. They have to go to the emergency room. Like here's a chance for me to explore this potential treatment modality that, while it's not supported by the medical community as a whole and it's not reimbursed by healthcare insurance, gives my son the best chance to live the life that I want him to live. And we've been doing this for a year now, and he eats 3 peanuts a day, and he eats 2.5 grams of sesame seeds a day, and he's basically like allergy free now. So it's just like it's a testament to how broken the system is,
Yeah,
like
no, I think yeah, no, I mean, I think that was a perfect analogy, and one that the audience can definitely resonate with. And I have a question. I'm interested in your opinion on this. Uh, to your point, people are moving in this direction, and a lot of eyeballs see money signs, right? Because there's a lot of opportunity here. And it feels like every couple weeks now, there's a new company coming out who's reaching out to the masses around, sending you an in-home kit or directing you to a lab where you can do the blood work, and then everything's going to be streamed on an app where you can have access to everything. And for the sake of privacy, I'm not going to say the name, but my personal doctor, and I go to see him, and it's a concierge practice, and he's done the whole gamut of blood work for me. And um, I I ask you because, are all these services essentially the same? Like, whether I go to my doctor or whether I use one of these, new tech platforms, it seems like the tech platforms are just trying to all undercut each other with regards to your monthly subscription cost. But I just kind of want to hear it direct from you with regards to what you know about the industry and maybe perhaps what you've seen out there. But is it all essentially the same?
I don't know what exactly is being marketed out there. I think I can understand a little bit about what you're saying, but especially when it comes to these like diagnoses marketing platforms, like those are definitely all the same, which is
Yeah.
that they're over testing people's
Yes.
bloods and feeding on their fears about some underlying diagnosis that might be missed
And
by your
then
primary
telling
care
them that they're
doctor.
helping them be preventative.
Right. This is the thing. So what's very interesting in my practice and what really surprises people is that I actually don't send blood work after we meet the first time because I usually don't have that much of a question, especially if we're not like pursuing a certain therapeutic modality. There's no point in sending labs. You cannot conflate sending labs for being therapeutic. People are like, oh, I'll send labs and I'll feel better because I'll know this. No, a lot of times when you do something unnecessarily, like if you image someone unnecessarily or you do lab work unnecessarily, you get what's called an incidentaloma. You incidentally find something that's meaningless and it freaks people out. Okay, it happens all the time. And it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money. What I do instead is like I do a 90-minute interview and I just figure out the context of someone's life. You can actually derive a lot more value by doing a deep dive interview and finding out, just as we did in this podcast right now, like how'd you grow up? What's your life at home like? What are your stressors? What do you do for work? What do you do for exercise? What are you eating at home? Who cooks? What do you do for stress management? What are your doctors taking care of for you right now? What medications do you take? What allergies do you have? What perceived food intolerances do you have? I get more information from that, and I can definitely get them started on something, some sort of intervention right off the bat with that, than with these like diagnostics packages of 5,000 biomarkers. You can't conflate that with the true value of developing a healthcare plan. Like my value to my clients and my patients is that I'm a fiduciary to their health. I'm not going to sit here and waste their time and waste their money. I'm going to treat them like I would myself, which is to figure out the easiest, simplest, most straightforward, most effective interventions to get the most of their outcome. You know the Pareto principle in economics,
Explain it for the
20%.
audience.
So the Pareto principle in economics is that it turns out that 20% of the economy is actually generating 80% of GDP. 20% of the highest performers give you 80% of your outcome. It turns out in any complex system, that's the case. So like you could be hit with all this stuff like around sleep, exercise, nutrition, this, that, supplement. Like it's just too much. It's too much. The business, like you said, like the whole wellness business. That's why I entered the space. Like if there's just too much and it's confusing people. And I think you need someone to help you cut through the noise. And so when you get a healthcare advocate or a fiduciary, like I help you figure out those 20% of interventions that we can just focus on like one project at a time and then slowly get you towards 80% of the outcomes that we want. That's like a good place to start.
I know in speaking to you that there's absolutely no part of you that would ever go back and, and change the course of the decision that you made to go in this direction. But, just because you wouldn't go backwards, it doesn't mean that there aren't some uncertainties around what's in front of you. And so talk to me about, being in your shoes today. What are some of, the the deepest uncertainties that kind of uh, that drive you a little crazy with regards to you can't control everything.
Yeah, definitely not uncertainties, but just from a very pragmatic business standpoint, like I made a big leap, right? I was making a salary. I quit that job in order to free up my time to do the things that I want to do, which was one, spend more time with my family, because my job was absolutely sucking the joy out of my life when I had the second child because I was working weekends, and every time I worked a weekend or a holiday, I was just like, what am I doing in the hospital when my family's out having fun? You know what I mean? You're gonna have young children for like 10 years of your life. You will never get those years back. So that part I never second guess. Like I don't miss the money. Definitely don't. Then I made the capital investment into this business, and now we're talking about business. So how do I reconcile that risk? I maintained a per diem contract with the hospital, so I pop in once in a while just to make a little bit of cash here and there. I had a big reservoir of cash, to make the capital investment, plus a runway for the business, plus a runway for my life, right? So I have that. And then like now I'm in this like phase. So it's been a couple months, the business has been open. We're seeing some growth, but we're still in the red because like I'm not generating enough revenue to cover my costs. But based on what my mentors have told me, especially when it comes to building an organic medical practice, you have to be very patient. Like a year, maybe you'll break even at a year. Maybe you'll start making money year and a half, 2 years. Like that's the order of magnitude of time that we're talking about. I can understand that mentally, but on a day to day, when I'm here and like I don't have patience and I'm still trying to market, I'm trying to do the emails, the Instagram, like flyers, like this part of me, that's when I get frustrated. I'm just like, oh my God, like
They didn't teach you this in med school.
yeah, they don't teach you this in med school. And it's just like, oh my God, like, is this gonna work? That's when the doubt creeps in. Cause like when you're in the thick of it, you're like, should I run this magazine ad? Is this like the thing that's gonna get me clients versus making this connection here? It's like this is the stuff and this is just generic entrepreneurship. Like the fear of going into business it's that uncertainty. Because no one goes into business and starts making money like the next day. There's no business that does that. It's always like time to figure out whether or not it's going to work. I do think in my heart of hearts, I believe that this will work eventually. And I do think in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, I'm going to look back and say, you know what, I'm very happy I made that leap 3 years ago. But I think for 3 years, I'm going to suffer, but that's okay.
Well, look, personally, I think that perspective is what differentiates you, and in a very positive way. And this is going to be a huge generalization, and some people might not like that I'm going to say this, but I know a lot of doctors, and a lot of the doctors that I know are brilliant individuals when it comes to medicine. But when it comes to running a business, or when it comes to just like some everyday things, you feel like you're talking to someone that you couldn't believe went to med school.
No, this is
And
true. You're on point.
yeah, and sometimes I'm baffled by this. It's like even like talking to a doctor friend of mine about just like basic stock market principles, and it's like, dude, if you know how to do what it is that you do for a living, you should definitely understand how this works. And it's like mind boggling to them. And I walk away from those conversations knowing everything that we spoke about today and thinking to myself, they just got to stick to what they're doing in traditional healthcare, because there's no way that this person's
That
going
they'd
to be able,
survive elsewhere. Yeah.
they're not going to survive if they have to go outside and like run a business. And one of the things that's, really, really awesome to hear, you think out loud is, understanding the mechanics, the process, managing the expectations, understanding that, again, in a similar situation with that same doctor, like they can't handle the stock market swings. And if you can't handle a stock market swing, you definitely can't handle being in the red for an unknown period of time. Um, and so it speaks volumes about you and about the fact that you were able to think beyond the scope of the textbook. You're able to think beyond the scope of the walls of the hospital, and you were able to expand your horizons to understand that you're working toward a broader mission, and that broader mission is not going to be accomplished overnight. And I think that understanding, quite frankly, is probably the perfect way to round out this conversation, because I think that's what this is all about, man. Um, I want to say that I'm very proud of you. I'm proud to know you. I'm proud of what we've learned about each other over the last several months. It was very cool to watch you commit to training, show up, do those long runs, show up on race day, power through the conditions, because I think it's reflective of what it is that you're building, and it shows that you're committed to the bigger picture here. So I just want to say thanks, man. I appreciate
No,
you
I
for
really appreciate that. And I have to be honest, I'm gonna milk that because like the great irony of being in my position is like I don't have a lot of people telling me that they're proud of me. So whenever I can get it, I do sincerely appreciate it.
you got it, my man.
Hmm.
Appreciate you, and excited to share this with the world.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode of the Mile 40 podcast, go ahead, subscribe, leave a review, and share the word. Thank you for being a part of the Mile 40 family. And let's unite in showing the world that comebacks are always greater than setbacks.